Welcome back to Nothing Happens for a Reason. I am so grateful to be here with you for Season 3. This is a space where we honor the truth of grief without the pressure to fix it or find a hidden meaning. We believe in dismantling the platitudes and sitting with the messy, unfiltered reality of loss. Whether you've been with us since the beginning or you're finding us for the first time today, I'm glad you found your way here. Let's get into today's episode. This is Nothing Happens for a Reason. Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Well, thanks for being here today. Why don't we get started with you introducing yourself?
All right. My name is Jen Hoye. I live in Massachusetts with my family and a million rescue animals. I'm a writer, a mental health advocate, and a marathon runner. The mental health advocacy grew out of a grief journey after I lost my brother Teddy to suicide in 2017. Started writing to help process the complex emotions related to suicide loss, and it led me to write a book entitled Thick Thighs, Tattoos, and Breaking Taboos. That's a story about how I lost my brother and found myself again in running and advocacy, which are both things I had no plans of being a part of.
Thanks for sharing that introduction. And for people watching this interview with video, this is what the book looks like. And Teddy's on the front of it.
It's your brother.
Yeah. As we're jumping into all of it and you saying like those are things that weren't necessarily going to be part of your life until losing Teddy. And I know that your book really starts with talking about this concept that I talk with so many people in the grieving community about, which is the like pre-loss versus post-loss. And I know for me, like time itself is very hard to track, I think in general. And losing my mom first, and my life is very much categorized of like pre her death, post her death. And then I have like a now subcategory of when my sister died, of pre her death, post her death. And like that's how I keep time now. And so again, I know that you, I think really in just the first few pages, like talk about that. And so I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about what that experience has been for you.
Well, first, I'm sorry for your losses. I mean, losses of that, like life rearranging losses like that, they really do change the entire trajectory of your life, but they also change your history. I always call it the before and the after. And my life will always be living in the after. Some days I'm still not sure how I'm going to survive it. And so that the before piece, I cling to.
What do you think you cling to about it besides the obvious, like Teddy was still here?
The obvious that Teddy is still here. I cling to some of the happier memories and even some of the not so great memories, because they remind me that we had a life together and we were so close in age and so close growing up. We were like almost one word, Jennifer and Teddy. And so I don't ever remember a time in my life when I wasn't Teddy's sister. And so that's hugely important to me because I was always Teddy's sister. And now in this time after, am I still his sister? Am I still a sister? Like I have to remind myself, I'm always Teddy's sister.
Yeah, I find that is a very complicated thing for me as well in grief. And I call it normally my brain glitching whether certain questions are asked of me or memories where it's hard to, I think, figure out sometimes in my head. And, you know, a big one for me is my sister Sarah, who had died of overdose in 2022. She lived in New York City for her whole adult life. She had a husband there. And I still go to New York City a few times a year to see my brother-in-law and see some of my best friends that live there. But when people ask me like, "Oh, are you going to see family?" I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm going to see my brother-in-law. They're like, so your sister? And I'm like, well, no. or do you still have family on the East Coast? And it's it just is something that is very, I think, difficult for me to like talk about, and not just because it's talking about it. I talk about death and grief all the time, but it's just something that my brain, I think, doesn't always compute, even though it's been a few years now.
And I don't think it will ever compute. Even now, 9 years later, I sometimes freeze when people say, "Oh, do you have any siblings?" Well,
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure how to answer that. They'll say, "Yes, I have a brother. He died." And then
Yeah.
they move on to a different topic because nobody wants to talk about that. The fact that he was a twin, like, and I
Mm,
oftentimes forget that I had another brother. Um,
yeah.
I never met Teddy's twin Joseph, and I didn't even know of his existence until I was about 8 or 9 years old. And so that's also strange for me because now I have 2 siblings who have died, and I'm all that's left.
That feels like a lot of pressure. I don't know why immediately that was just the thought that I
It's
felt.
tremendous pressure, and
Yeah.
especially, like, now as my parents are aging, Teddy and I always talked about who was going to take care of them when they were older, and I would be like, "Well, it's not me." Like,
Right.
I'm not capable, and my brother was the most, like, nurturing, kind, caring, guy. And my mom used to joke and say, like, "Thank God we have Teddy because if it was up to you to take care of us, you'd just push my wheelchair off a cliff." And she's not wrong. Like, I'm just not equipped. And so
Mm,
I don't know how to navigate this stage of life without him.
mm. The pressure of all of this, like you're saying, your is what is left. And it's making me think about another part of your book that I don't think you used the term, but what I had highlighted is you're really talking about secondary losses. Like Teddy's the primary loss, and then the secondary losses are all the things that ripple from that. It's in chapter 8. You wrote, I lost more than my brother that day. I lost my parents in a way too, because the grief of losing a child is something no parent ever truly recovers from. I lost friends who didn't know what to say, so they just said nothing and disappeared. I lost my health because I was so consumed by grief that I neglected my own body, my own needs, my own life. And I'm sure like so much more than that as well. And something else, and I think you wrote it in a different section here that I'd also had connected to, but for me, I mean, this is true with losing my mother as well, but with my sister, feeling like I've lost part of my childhood
Mhm.
and memories and things that only her and I would know, or things that only she would know. One of my many grief tattoos is I have a moose on my arm. My sister and I would call each other Moosey and Moose as long as I can remember, and I don't know why. And that that was that was like a huge grief moment for me because it's just something I did, and when I decided to get this tattoo for her, I was like, "Of course, that's what I'm gonna get." And then as people are asking, like, "Well, why the moose?" It felt like another significant loss in that moment of like, I don't really know. Like, since we were kids though, and I was like, she might know, but she's the only person that would know, and I'll never know.
I often refer to Teddy as my history keeper
Yeah.
because he was always the one that would know or would validate the memories that I had. Like, yeah, that really did happen. And now,
Mhm.
you know, if I'm the only one that remembers these things, did they actually happen?
Yeah. It's a huge loss on top of the already life-changing huge loss
Hmm.
that you went through. When you're thinking back pre-death, do you feel like your family, or I guess speaking just for you, like, is the narrative that's so common of like, we never saw it coming, like, does that fit for you?
It does and it doesn't because I mean, in the suicide loss survivor community, they talk often about the tyranny of hindsight. After Teddy died, I could point to a couple of things that were likely contributing factors to his taking his own life. There was a whole list. including things that I didn't know until after he died. Like he had called in sick for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
He had started drinking again after being sober for 10 years. He broke up with his girlfriend. I didn't know any of those until after he died. And had I known even one of them, I would have been concerned enough that I would have driven to his house.
I've never heard that term before. It's a really poignant term. Yeah, like the what ifs. Like there were signs. You just didn't have awareness into them.
Have the awareness into them, or even the ones that I had awareness of, I wasn't connecting the pieces
Mm.
because he was normal Teddy. He was doing all of the things that he always did. He wasn't acting any differently. And I think that that was, I think, a big part of how he hid his depression so well that, that no one knew. And a lot of people were like, were completely shocked.
And so it sounds like, again, for you, it's not like complete and utter shock because you knew Teddy and you knew struggles.
Hmm.
And the fact that it had gotten to that point with things kind of going under the radar that maybe were things that led to his decision.
Absolutely. And it's not lost on me that the week that he died, he had spent most of the week trying to, like, cheer me up. I was contemplating taking my own life that same week,
Oh, wow.
and every day he checked in with me, made sure I was okay, and so I was so wrapped up in my own stuff that even I don't think I would have seen signs,
Yeah. Yeah. You were in your own tunnel vision.
and I feel tremendous guilt for that.
Had you shared with Teddy that openly the week before that that's how dark it was
Yes.
for you that you were thinking about taking your own life?
Yes.
Hmm.
He was the only one that knew that.
I was curious because I know something else that you wrote in your book is that you were raised in a family system, as a lot of us are, not talking about your feelings and
Mhm.
kind of the what do you have to complain about? Suck it up mentality. I literally at that part of the book just underlined and wrote like, "Gah," like can relate and also just like how devastating that is. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of special and interesting that you and him are maybe trying to break some of the ways that you were raised in that way.
We tried very hard, for many years. Even as kids, we were pretty open with one another because I think that we realized that we could be like, we were each other's safe person.
Mm,
And so nothing was out of bounds for discussion. And he was really the only person in my life that I was that open with outside of my very best friend. But even the week that Teddy died, she didn't know the depth of what I was feeling either. Only Teddy did.
mm. And I'm just thinking, sitting here thinking also, like, if you were already in that dark of a place when you lost your brother, like, what did
Mhm.
that do to you on the other end in the post Teddy's death world?
I have very few memories of
Yeah,
the first year or two,
yeah,
very few. And that is heartbreaking because my kids were all young. My youngest was 5 years old. My oldest was a senior in high school. I don't remember most of his senior year. And I think my brain just stopped working. It just, to protect me, it just stopped working.
yeah.
Talk about like a brain glitch. Like it was I would get up and take care of my family and go to work. I have no idea how I did my job, but I did it. And I took care of my family. But beyond that, I couldn't tell you what we did during those first few years.
Mm. What do you think, despite not knowing and remembering that period of your life, what kept you going? Because I think, right, there's a lot of people, if you were like, oh my gosh, I'm already this close to the edge for myself, and then losing a significant person, like, did the suicidality increase for you during that period from what you remember?
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly grateful. I have a tremendous support system. of friends, including my best friend Jen and my friend Mario. And I wrote about that first Christmas Eve that I was at home alone because the kids needed normalcy. So my husband took them to his uncle's, and my parents had escaped to Florida, and I was home alone. And I was in a very dark place. And out of nowhere, my friend Mario called and said, what's going on, ugly? Like, what are you doing? And could tell that I was not in a good place. And he had recently lost his dad. So I think he
Mhm.
was in his way trying to share some comfort because he had experienced a life rearranging loss as well. And he stayed on the phone with me until my family got home. And I will forever be grateful for that.
I do remember reading that part of the book of like I just can't, right?
Right.
Like the holidays, I just can't, and needing to be on your own, which was probably is what you needed and also probably not good for you at the same time,
Absolutely.
especially in the first few years after loss and having a friend that sensed it. I don't know if that's the right word.
And he said I just popped into his mind, and he thought, you know what? I'll see if she's home. Like,
Mhm.
because everybody's home on Christmas Eve, right? Like, I was home. I was home
Mhm.
sitting in the dark crying, and I don't know how I would have survived had I not had that phone call.
And so at what point in all of this, and again, I recognize the first few years was a blur and I can like, deeply relate to that as well. But what are the things that you were trying to do to like take care of yourself or your grief during those first few years?
I wasn't trying at all. I wasn't living. All of my coping skills were absolutely horrible and unhealthy. Binge eating, self-harm, shopping, not sleeping. I mean, you name it, I was doing it, and everything relied on secrecy and privacy. So I am probably one of the few people on earth that is grateful for the COVID pandemic
Mm,
because suddenly everyone was home.
yeah.
And all of those coping mechanisms that I leaned into in those first few years, I couldn't do because we were on top of each other 24/7. And I remember one day I thought, if I don't leave this house, I am going to spontaneously combust. And I'm going for a walk. And everyone just kind of stopped and they were like, what? Which is like not something I would do. Not only was I not sleeping and binge eating and had gained 100 pounds. But my son ran track, and I would joke and say like I was going to get it like one of those zero point zero stickers for my car. Like, I'm not running. I ran in high school. That was enough. It was awful. And
Yeah.
so the fact that I even wanted to go for a walk was just foreign to all of us.
Mhm.
But that's kind of when I started to process the grief because
Mhm.
I had to lean into something that wasn't all of these harmful, just self-destructive things.
So it started with a walk.
Yep, just a walk, just one.
Yeah. And then what happened?
I kept walking. And one day, at the beginning, I felt like crap. I mean, I couldn't even get to the end of my street, which is like not even a tenth of a mile. It was awful. I was out of breath. And each day I would go one telephone pole further. And I had lived there for 18 years and I had never left my street. So
Mm.
this was all very new to me. And I just kept walking and walking and walking. And all right, I'm gonna go for a walk. And one day my kids realized, You walked 10 miles today.
Wow.
Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Oh, I did walk 10 miles and I feel really good. And I'm
Hmm.
sleeping at night. Wow. What an amazing thing."
So walking just became something that you started doing. It sounds like one to get out of the house
I
and to
wanted to
just
get out
like
of the house,
process.
but then it became kind of really one of my key tools in my mental health toolbox until I was able to get connected with a new therapist and get back on antidepressants, which I recognize now. Some people do not do well with medication. I don't do well without medication, and I recognize that. But it wasn't until I started walking that I could start processing some of these feelings. And then working with a therapist has helped immensely. I like that she challenges me.
Mhm.
It's not always comfortable, but I don't do well with comfort,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, part of why I run marathons. Like, you don't run marathons because they feel good. They don't feel good at all.
No, no. I'm like, "Fuck that," but I'm happy it works for people. So you kept walking, you got a new therapist, back on meds. At, like, what point now is this in your post Teddy death world? Like, how many years?
He died in 2017. This was in 2020. So the summer of
Okay.
2020, I started walking. And one of those nights I was up doom scrolling and I saw this thing from a mental health charity about, do a marathon in a month to support suicide prevention. And I thought, all right, well, it was going to happen around the time of my brother's anniversary. So I said, oh, this is a good idea. Why didn't I do this? And I thought, well, my brother was the kind of person that would have walked a million miles to help even a stranger. So, like, a marathon in a month really isn't that big of a deal considering the amount of miles I'm walking in a day. So I said, What number could I do?" And because I don't ever do anything halfway, I was like, "I'm going to walk 300 miles this month." I dedicated the miles to people, and I started to become more active in the
Mm,
suicide prevention community and started volunteering, and those were truly instrumental in helping me navigate this completely foreign landscape. And then that July, that same charity sent out an email, or just mass email, inviting people to apply for the Boston Marathon. And I thought, why not? And so I applied, and my family said, "You haven't run since 1990." And I was like, how hard can it be? And my whole family, my parents, my husband, they were like, "This is a horrible idea. This is the worst idea you've ever had." And my little one, who was about, he must have been 8 or 9 at the time, he's like, "Mama, you're gonna win." And I was like, I'm not gonna win, but I'm gonna finish." She goes, "And then will you give grandma the middle finger?" And I said, "Absolutely."
oh
So,
my
a lot of
gosh.
times in my running pose,
Mhm,
I use the middle finger, and that's, like,
mhm.
that kind of where it started, is because people were, and rightfully so, concerned that I would choose my first race after 30 years to be one of the world's most difficult marathons, but I finished.
Wow. Isn't the Boston Marathon a really hard one to qualify for?
So, oh, I'm not qualifying for anything. I am a back of the pack slow runner. I applied through a charity, which
Oh,
means I
got
had
it.
to
Cool.
raise, so I had a fundraise, which
Yeah.
fundraising is a lot more difficult than actually training for the marathon,
I can imagine that is not yeah.
especially for Boston. But
Yeah.
I saw it as an opportunity to use writing to connect with
Mm,
others and to share with them pieces about my brother, or education around mental health and suicide prevention, and to talk about all those things that growing up we were taught not to talk about.
right.
Because I feel like if we had been more open, or if society was more open, maybe we wouldn't be in this after.
That's such an important, I think, part of advocacy work, obviously, with just like death and grief in general, and then these categories of for you suicide, for me like overdose. That not everyone, even in my family, are on board with me talking about the fact that my sister died of an overdose.
Mhm.
That's some There are some people that I think would rather have it be painted as something else. And for me, the authenticity of like what happened is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in the beginning, my parents were not super comfortable with my advocacy work.
I was wondering.
It was difficult for them, not only the topic, but also that I was being so open and so vulnerable with my brother's death. And it wasn't until I crossed the finish line of the first Boston Marathon that my dad said, I'm really proud of you. You know,
Hmm,
you and Teddy helped a lot of people." And that meant a lot.
I just get chills. Also, very fucking cool that you just said my first Boston Marathon.
I just finished my third
Wow, that's
like
amazing.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, whenever it was. Like, again, time is
It was
very
amazing.
weird.
It's magic.
Wow. So how many marathons have you run?
That was number 5. No, 6. I've done couple dozen half marathons, which are my absolute favorite because you can just run it and then go about your day,
I don't
which
think for
sounds
everybody.
strange,
I don't think I
but
could go about
like
my day with a half marathon.
like I can go run a half marathon and then still like on the way home go to the grocery store and I'm fine. And then I one 40-mile ultra marathon
40 miles? Where was that one?
in New Hampshire. It's called the Hamster Wheel, and it's a 4-mile loop that you just run continuously. And you can take the thing about ultras is you can take breaks and like you stop and get a snack.
It's like a
And
NASCAR race, but for
kind of
your
like, I
legs.
mean, in an ultra, I'm like, I just got passed by an old man in cargo pants. Like, like
He had snacks in those cargo
Boston
pants.
got passed by a drunk man in a Prince Eric costume. So whatever.
That's one of the most Boston things I've heard. I'm sure
Mhm.
there's a handful of people that are drunk running the Boston
Oh,
Marathon.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible though. I think something that I really loved about your book also is you talking about what running was to you, that it's not just like, hey, everybody, I started running and now I'm super healthy. That's not where it started for you. And so,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about like the progression with your running and of how it was not necessarily like this is the healthiest coping skill I've ever done for my grief before?
It's interesting because I get so like I always say like I don't look like a natural runner.
Mm.
I'm not like tall and thin. I'm short and not thin. And running doesn't come naturally or easy for me the way it did for my older son and now my younger son. And as much as during the run, I would be like talking to myself and swearing and probably tripping and peeing my pants. Afterwards, I felt so much better. I
Hmm.
felt like mentally, I felt better, but also physically. And I felt like, I just did that. I did something that really wasn't easy. And if I can do that, I can do this. And really, it became a way for me to show myself that I'm stronger than I think that I
Yeah.
am. Um, and also, you said it's really hard to qualify for Boston. I am not a podium runner. I'll never win my age group. I'll never qualify for anything. And I still run.
Yeah.
I'm running the same 26 miles as the man who finished it in under 2 hours. But,
Mhm.
you know, I, I'm going to finish. And that's something that's important to me and I'm super stubborn. Parents would call me tenacious, but we know really it's just stubborn. Um, and when we were little, my brother looked up my name in the dictionary, and a Jenny is a female donkey. And he taught everyone to say hee haw every time I walked by. But like, I always joke that I'm the Sicilian donkey. I'm a stubborn Sicilian donkey. And if I start something, I'm going to finish it. And it has like kind of grown into a story about life. I'm here. I'm
Mm.
stronger than I think, even on my worst days. And if I can get a running, great. If not, I'll get a walk or something. I crave that movement now, but
Hmm.
I can do this because I am a stubborn donkey and I'm getting to the end.
Wow. I was just thinking, and I'm gonna probably need a moment to find this part in the book that I highlighted that's about what you're talking about here. So you wrote, because even when it hurts, even when the miles feel impossibly long, even when I'm dragging myself forward step by stubborn donkey step, I know I can keep going, that I have kept going. That's what running has given me. Not freedom from grief, but proof that I can carry it, that I can lace up, show up, and do hard things. That even on the days when I feel weak, I'm stronger than I think. I like starred and underlined because one of my favorite mantras that I started saying to myself, probably before my mom died, but was in the dying process. And one I say on a very regular basis, and I share it with my clients often too, is I've done harder things. And whether that is a really hard exercise class I just went to, or just like on some days getting out of bed when I feel like I don't want to, taking a shower. It can be a huge range of different things that I apply it to, but I have done harder things because, at least for me, having had to survive watching my mom die, her dying, and then my sister dying afterwards, I don't think anything will be as fucking hard as that. And life might surprise me and I might be like, fuck, here's something else that now is on the list. I don't see things that are going to be quite as hard as that. And so when I was reading that again, I can do the hard things. I'm stronger than I think I am.
I've lived through the absolute worst moment of my life.
Yeah.
So even if in that moment I feel like I can't go on, I already showed myself that I can.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like thinking about you being in some like physically excruciating moments with running and then like reminding yourself that yeah, you've done harder things, like you were stronger than you think you are to help finish the race or whatever it is for
Mhm.
that day. And for me, it's different than somebody telling me I'm strong. I talk about this in a lot of my episodes with other people, and I know there's a lot of people that relate to it, but like me telling myself that I've done harder things or that you're saying I'm stronger than I think I am, it's very different than someone saying that you're strong because the connotation to me is very different.
It is. And for me, when someone says, "Oh, you're so strong," I think like, well, what other freaking choice did I have?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be strong. I want to be soft. I want to be soft and gentle and not be a donkey. I
Yeah.
don't want, but it's very different when you're in something and you're telling yourself you've done harder things and you can do this too.
Yep. That's usually the takeaway when I've talked to other people about it of like, yeah, like what choice did I have? Or for me, when people say it to me, they say it in times of where I'm like masking well or showing up the way that I'm supposed to be showing up and not emoting and not struggling. And so it's almost like me reclaiming part of it. I know I'm fucking strong. And yeah, I don't want to be all the time. And what strong is to me is very different than what I think society thinks strong is when they look at me.
Absolutely. And I write about that a lot because
Mhm.
we always think of strength as not showing emotion or like
Yeah,
even like the expression man up. I mean, man up means stop
yeah,
being emotional, right? But
yeah,
to me, it takes a lot more strength to present yourself as you are and or to ask for help or
yeah.
admit that you can't do it alone than it
Right.
does to put on a mask and have no emotion.
And how unfortunate it is that still, right, that's like what society values more, which is a big part of this community I've created. I'm sure very much part of your advocacy work too within the mental health and suicide spaces.
Mhm.
'Cause, like, that's a huge part, right, of especially suicide loss and also, addiction and overdose. People usually it's because people don't have spaces or feel comfortable to talk about what's truly going on for whatever reason.
Absolutely, and overdose, addiction, substance use disorders, 90 whatever percent of the time, it's related to mental health. If we were more open about the things that pain us, I think we would see less suicide, less overdose,
Yes.
all of these things.
100%. Very much in agreement of that, which then really nicely actually leads to this other spot that I had just come across thinking about what you wrote about running. You wrote, I thought running would be the thing that saved me, but it couldn't because grief isn't something you fix and mental health isn't something you muscle through with sheer willpower. Then you go on to say, it didn't ease the pain, but it gave me a place to put it. It didn't eliminate the days when I felt stuck, but it reminded me that movement was possible even if it was slow and didn't look like what I wanted it to. Running didn't save me, but it did carry me through. It taught me patience, something I've never been great at. It taught me how to sit with discomfort and keep moving even when things felt impossible. Some days the miles came easily. Other days, every step was a battle. I think that's something that you do really beautifully in this entire book. Running didn't fix your grief. Another part you talk about that running actually in some points started as like you trying to run away from your grief and your feelings,
Yeah.
you having to actually confront it in those moments. And so the irony of that, and I think it's so common too. And yeah, I really love those
And
sections.
you had talked about a mantra, and one of the mantras that I kind of hold close is from Helen Keller, which is never bend your head, always hold it high, look the world straight in the eye. And for me, I remind myself that often, because to remind myself that it's okay for me to take up space. It's okay for my grief to take up space. And even if I'm having a griefy day, a crappy day, a miserable day, it doesn't matter. I still deserve to show myself love and to receive love from those around me. And so often I felt like, at least in the beginning, that my grief just made so many people uncomfortable that it was easier for me to shut it off. And when I do that, I felt shame. And I don't
Mm,
want to feel shame.
no. And the unfortunate truth is like majority of that perception probably wasn't in your head. It probably did make people uncomfortable.
Oh, it absolutely did. And like when I say that I lost friends, I mean, it wasn't kind of acquaintances. I'm talking
Yeah.
people that you spoke with every single day. And, one of my very good friends, one of my constants, said to another woman who was like part of our friend group who had just kind of disappeared, I'm really disappointed in you. And she admitted, well, I didn't know what to say. I get uncomfortable. And she said, okay, I'm going to give you one more chance. You can reach out to her. And she never did.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I'm out running, because I'm also kind of a jerk, I see her driving and I wave.
With the middle finger or
No, no, I smile and I wave, and I hope that she remembers
mm,
how she wasn't able to support me during my grief, but maybe has grown since then and has become more comfortable with those topics and can
mm,
support others in her life. It's tough. People
yeah.
do not like to talk about anything that is not pleasant. And one thing you learn in advocacy, especially around suicide prevention, is there's a lot of uncomfortable things to talk about.
And for me, I felt lucky. I found this wonderful book in my mom's dying process that I actually talk about a lot, that I joke that I should get royalties for, but there's no good card for this. Anyway, this book I read, I read it first to be like, how do I support my mom? And then I was like, this is one of the best books. Even as a therapist, I was like, this is one of the best books I've ever read, and had so many things I didn't even think of, even as a practitioner. And then I like started gifting to like so many people in my life. And like I too lost friends and connections because people, yeah, would rather say nothing
Mhm.
because of their discomfort. And I'm actually just literally yesterday, I've been for months working on like an ebook of how to support people who are grieving, because it is such a huge passion of mine, because I've experienced loss, I've experienced the discomfort, and I just don't think it has to be that way. And so it is something that I want to do more of. And again, it sounds like something that you are very much part of within your advocacy work and all the different things that you do as storytellers and agencies that you're connected to. Let's talk about tattoos for a moment. This is one of my favorite, actually, grief topics. So tell me about finding tattoos as part of your healing process.
So Teddy and I are part of a Sicilian family. My mom and my grandma had very strong opinions about tattoos. And my mother said, if you get a tattoo, we're kicking you out. So when I was 18, I got a tattoo and she didn't kick me out, which is a joke. And when my husband and I were going through pre-Cana, which is like the pre-marriage Catholic, I don't know, whatever it is, he asked me never to get another tattoo. And I was like 21. I was like, okay. Like not realizing that I was giving away freedom of choice over my own self and not really even understanding what that meant. And so after Teddy died, I started thinking I really wanted a tattoo with his signature because I had his signature in a card. I went and I got that first tattoo on my wrist. It's his signature and three birds for my three kids, my three little birds. I don't know. Something about it. It's a nice reminder. I can look at it whenever I'm feeling low. And I started to think, you know what? Like I'm running these races for my brother and I would like to celebrate some of these bigger ones in some way. And so every time I run a significant race in his memory, I'll get another tattoo. So, as I said, Jenny is a donkey, a female donkey. So I have a Sicilian donkey on one leg. And then on the other, I have a blue jay. And blue jays have always reminded me of my brother because they're annoying. So
Love
they're
that.
loud and goofy and annoying. But so when I run, one step is for him, one step is for me. And then it grew from there. And my husband has resigned himself to that. I'm going to continue getting tattoos because I just got number 13 after my last race. Every single one of them has some connection to my brother in some way, even if it doesn't appear to. And
Mm,
so that to me is incredibly significant because it helps me feel closer to him.
mm. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, tattoos for me also have been a big part of my grief journey. My half sleeve of my arm was started as a way of kind of coping with my mom's cancer, and it's grown and evolved, and it has different layers of meaning through that loss. The ones that were done after she died obviously have some of her ashes in them, and that's something that was really.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then, yeah, the moose on my arm, I got on my sister's first birthday, and I have a big raven that I got for her also, but something that you wrote in the book, there's so much I related to and connected to, but I think this section maybe was the most poignant for me. So you said, "My tattoos are not merely ink on skin, they're reminders, battle scars, tributes, a permanent way of saying this mattered, I mattered. Some were born from grief, others from growth." And when I thought about that, I can tell you exactly what it represented. That's like just purely grief and where I was at that point in my process. And other ones are still grief related, but more speak to like my process through healing and the growth of it. And so I
Hmm.
thought just the way you wrote that was very beautifully written.
Thank you.
I deeply connected to it, and it's funny, like I've always sometimes when people who don't have tattoos are like, "Oh, I don't know, like, what if I won't like it in 10 years?" And I've always been like, it represented a part of my life. And yeah, would I get the same tattoo I got when I was 18 today? Like, no. But and it's like it it represented that phase of my life, and one that before my sister died, I actually had thought about covering up as my sister and I got a tattoo in New York City together. Not matching tattoos, but it was her first tattoo. I think it was my second. And we just like walked into a shop and it's not very good. And so for years I was like, I should get this covered up some point. Like it looks really shitty. But now I'm like, I'm never gonna get that tattoo covered up because like I got it with my
Well, you
sister.
got it with your sister.
I got it with
And
my sister and it was a memory. And I'm like, I don't want to cover it up, even though it doesn't look very good.
because it's still a piece of your story. Like my very first tattoo that I got because I thought my mom would kick me out of the house. In my defense, it was 1990, and I walked into a tattoo shop with my college roommate. At that point, it was not called a tramp stamp.
A lower
And
back
like,
tattoo,
which
obviously.
like, like it's not like there was no meaning behind it, but there was
Mhm.
meaning. There was meaning because
Yeah.
I was trying to exercise my own independence in a
Yeah.
family system that did not
Mhm.
encourage independent thinking of any kind. So now that I think of it in that way, I like it.
And I can, not that I'm from a super Italian Sicilian family or anything, but I was told after my first tattoo that I shamed the family. You'll never get another one. And family has also, before my mom died, like they resigned. Also, to use your word, to like,
Yeah.
this is just who you are, I guess. Fine.
Well, my mom always says, "Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep getting these tattoos? Why do you do this?" And it's because I like them. But my latest tattoo, the Medusa portrait, she said, "Wow, that's beautiful." And I thought, "Oh,
Mm,
maybe there's some growth there too."
progress.
Yes, because I usually joke that my next tattoo will be her face on my rear end, and she's never sure if I'm joking or not because I named all of my chickens after her because she
Oh
doesn't
my
like them.
god. Oh
So
my
anything's
god.
possible.
That's amazing. That's so funny. Well, I'm curious, just as we're wrapping up, like what are some of the resources that you recommend people looking into if they have lost someone to suicide, specifically a sibling to suicide? What resources? And then I think I would love just to hear, are there a few things that you want people, the listeners today, to be hearing if they've experienced this?
If no one remembers anything else, I hope that folks will remember the number 988, the suicide and crisis text, call, online chat. It's available 24/7. And it's not just if you're in a suicidal crisis, it's if you're supporting someone that you love through crisis, or if they are in the throes of a substance use disorder. Oftentimes, people just need someone to talk to. And that's what these trained volunteers are there for. I share the resource in most of my social media posts because my hope is that when someone finds themselves in crisis or someone they love in crisis, that they remember to utilize that. Suicide loss is so isolating, but it doesn't need to be. And I
Mm.
often say that the community of people that I've met because I've lost my brother to suicide are some of the most supportive, compassionate, and understanding people around. There are so many organizations, whether it's Samaritans, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, that have chapters all over the country, all over the world. Those are great resources, but they're also it's important to consider grief groups. One of the first groups I joined was a sibling grief group, and it was online. I think that's important. Sibling loss is one of those underrepresented grief categories, even though most people on earth have a sibling and will theoretically lose a sibling in their lifetime, it's still very underrepresented. And there aren't a lot of resources out there. So when I come across one, I tend to share it as often as I can. I think kind of the biggest book that I always go back to is TJ Ray's Surviving the Death of a Sibling.
I have
Quoted
not read it.
oh my gosh, it was incredibly helpful, and I felt understood, and I felt
Mhm.
seen. And it opened doors to me looking for other resources as well.
I'll have to look into it. I'll put all of these things in the show notes too, but you mentioned the resources for if someone listening is currently struggling or knows someone that
Mhm.
is, resources if somebody's lost somebody to suicide. Any last advice of if somebody is listening, wanting to support somebody who's lost somebody to suicide, a third category?
You don't have to know the right thing to say, just show up. Probably one of the most impactful moments after my brother died, in like those weeks after the all the services ended and all of that, my best friend drove an hour with a cup of coffee to just sit with me on my couch. She didn't have anything to say. We sat and the TV was on and we just sat there. It was more important to me that she showed up than she had anything to say because you're not going to solve for someone's grief.
Just being there,
Yeah.
just showing up. Showing up is more important than, like you said, saying the quote right thing.
And you don't have to know what to say. Sometimes you just say, "You know what? I have nothing to say because this is really crappy, but I'm
Yeah,
here for you."
right. That's, again, such an important takeaway. I can talk about too much. 'Cause, yeah, people get really paralyzed and
They do.
they have to say the right thing that's going to fix it, and I'm like, "There's no fixing it."
There's no fixing.
So many people were like, "Oh, I don't wanna ask about it 'cause I don't wanna make you sad," and I'm like, "I'm always fucking sad." Like, you're not gonna remind me that my mom or my sister died, like,
Right,
I
like,
know that.
I'm aware, like, when I open my eyes in the morning, I am aware I'm in a world without my brother.
Yeah,
So bringing him up actually sometimes is helpful. I like to talk about my brother.
and that's what I remind people too, like, it's up to me to make boundaries if I don't feel like talking about it, but, like, don't make the decision for me.
Yeah,
Don't not bring it up because you don't wanna make me feel a certain way. Like, I can decide
absolutely.
in that moment. So, such a good takeaway. I really appreciated at the end of your book, you talked about how, like, you do not have to turn your pain into a cause, or you said make it your whole identity, even though that's what you've done, right? And in some ways, me too. And I think that often in our society, there's this like pressure for people to find purpose out of their suffering or to do something with it. So again, I really appreciated from somebody and another somebody who has done that, also just validating like that does not have to be your way. They don't have right way for everybody. It's just something that we chose to do, and you don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, you need to do what feels comfortable and authentic to you. Like I joke, I am the human equivalent of an exclamation point. So of course I'm going to make it my entire personality. That is how I process. But for others, they may not be comfortable doing that. And that is okay. When I encounter people who have just lost somebody, they're
Mhm.
newly bereaved, they always say, "Well, what do I do? How do I get through this?" And I say, "You get through this by feeling all of your feelings and knowing that every single one of them is normal."
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think such powerful words. My therapist often talks about right, like grievers sometimes are categorized into instrumental grievers or intuitive grievers. Not to say it's black and white, one or the other,
Mhm.
but very much an instrumental griever of like the people that make causes or books or podcasts, right? But it doesn't speed up my grieving process. I'm not like healed because I'm doing this work. I don't believe in ED healed, period. I think we're always healing in
Yeah,
some regard. And just because somebody chooses to not do it that way, it's not like that is what's going to heal you. And you have to force yourself to get to a point of doing something with your grief. You don't.
exactly. Exactly.
I said before we got started, I am really grateful that you reached out to me because I'm always looking for beautifully, authentically written books about something that's incredibly hard to talk about for so many people. And so thank you for coming into my realm and allowing me to read your book and sit down with you and
Thank you.
talk about things that again a lot of people think are too hard to talk about, and you taking the time to be here with me today.
Well, thank you for speaking with me and thank you for creating a safe place for these conversations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me for another episode. If this conversation helped you feel less alone, there are a few ways to stay connected into this community. To stay updated on everything we're doing, you can subscribe to our newsletter or follow us on Instagram. If you're feeling the digital fatigue and looking for support that you can actually hold in your hands, please join the waitlist for the Echo Registry. Our Pen Pal project is for anyone tired of connecting through screens and looking for the tactile connection of writing to another grieving human. And of course, you can grab the free ebook, Let Me Know If You Need Anything, and other things to stop saying right on the website. And lastly, if you haven't yet, please take a second to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's a small act that makes a massive difference in helping other grievers find this space. Take care of yourself, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.